Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're doing okay, staying safe and well. No doubt everybody is in sparkling form this morning after Arsenal's 1-1 draw with Slavia Prague in the Europa League last night. There really is nothing quite like scoring a late goal, thinking you're going to win the game and then conceding a fucking ridiculous equaliser 4 minutes into the 4 minutes of injury time to give them an away goal to take into the second leg. I mean, it's really annoying me, that goal this morning, I have to say. Normally, the cold light of day allows me to rationalise things, but that goal, the way it happened, the needlessness of it, it's just so irritating in a particularly irritating season. Every time is like having an itch, and every time you scratch the itch, you get a more itchy itch somewhere else and in a more difficult place to scratch. It's last night was not good at all, and I know we had chances to win the game and we should have taken those chances and it would have been different if we'd scored, but you know, we didn't, and that seems to be a bit of a recurring theme. So look, rather than me going off on one here in the opening part of the podcast, because the game took place last night, we're obviously not recording until today, Friday, and we might as well get straight into it and bring in our guest. As always, I'm delighted to welcome to the show Philippe Auclair. Hi, Philippe.
Good morning to you, Andrew.
I'm interested to have this discussion. We've been having some very non-plus small talk off mic, which has consisted of both of us going phew, and just making strange noises at each other as we try and come to terms with what it is we're going to talk about. I think we should probably separate it into two sections, if you like, because I think there are some broad issues that we should discuss and are up for discussion because of what's going on. And then, of course, there is the very specific issue of last night and last night's game and the various issues that have arisen from that. So I think that's where we start. And I'm curious as to your gut feeling about last night, because, objectively you could say we had chances to score, chances to win the game, good chances to win the game. I think most people would acknowledge that there are times when we have played worse this season and been a lot less, okay, I'm not saying we were good, but we've definitely been worse in the past. But that game to me felt perhaps more damaging than any other so far this season. So I'm curious as to what your gut feeling about what happened last night is.
I would agree with you because, for example, the performance against Liverpool was much worse than that, was dire. But in a way, it didn't really matter because it was a game that didn't have any significance for the season. This is different. This is thanks to a very kind draw, so we thought. You could easily imagine the Arsenal that we've seen, at some stages this season, like against Chelsea, against Tottenham in the second game, against Leicester. We could imagine that Arsenal team going actually all the way to the final and perhaps, who knows, getting a spot in the Champions League next season. So it was a huge game. And I think that the reason why people are so down is that we had G'd ourselves up over the past couple of weeks, thinking, wow, this is a game that could define our season. And in fact, it is a tie that probably will define the season if we don't go past Slavia Prague, who, they're no mugs. They can play football. They've got some decent players in there. They're clearly, as people always say, well organized at the back. And they took Leicester out of the competition. And Leicester is a better team than Arsenal this season. No doubt about that. But this coming on the back as well of the win over Spurs, then the comeback, the thrilling comeback against West Ham, you thought, okay, there is something to fight for here. But yes, there was something to fight for, but there was no fight, was there? And yes, there were chances, hit the woodwork twice. Like I said, Alex is probably still wondering, what did I do exactly? What did I even try to do? And there were other chances, but they did have their chances too. But you thought, the thing is that when Nicolas Pepe scores this goal, and it's a lovely goal, by the way.
Yes.
The finish is really quite exquisite because he really has to give it spin so that it goes past the keeper and then off the post. That's just gorgeous. And you think, yeah. So it's a conjunction of things. It's just to make absolutely sure you feel as miserable as possible. Basically,
the late equaliser really obviously doesn't help. And we can talk about that in more detail perhaps in a moment. But I think even aside from conceding that late goal, 1-0 would have been fine. I still think some of the concerns that I have about the performance and the way that the game was managed from start to finish would still have been relevant. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but when you use the word managed, you mean it seriously? Because I'm not absolutely sure that Arsenal knows what game management is.
Okay, well, we're getting into some of the broad issues, but while we're here, let's do it. I think substitutions have been Mikel Arteta's. Well, look, he's a young manager. We all know that. We know that there are going to be teething problems, if you like. There are going to be things that he learns on the job. It just feels to me like this is something that he is not necessarily learning on the job, and in fact, it could be getting worse. The way that the game is managed. I think we need to talk about team selection in a moment as well. But in that second half, it was blindingly obvious that Arsenal needed to change something, and we brought on Martinelli for Willian in about 72 minutes, and then it was 78 minutes when we brought on Pepe, Aubameyang and El Neni, and all of a sudden when you have players with legs who can run, it makes a difference to the way that you play. So can you think of any logical reason as to why Mikel Arteta appeared so reluctant to change and make subs in a competition in which he can make 5 changes? He can make 5 subs in this competition. So it's not like a situation where, in the Liverpool game, when Tierney gets injured before halftime, you have to make a change, and it maybe changes your mind about what you can do at halftime if you want to make a change there. You can bring on 5 subs. So what in general do you view this as an issue for Arteta? And in terms of last night, how do you explain the apparent reluctance to change what wasn't working?
That's a lot. This is perhaps time for one of those pauses with strange grunts. I was, I think, like everybody else, I was not chomping at the bit. I was jumping up and down thinking, well, what is he waiting for? It's not working. The original team selection, I didn't really have a problem with probably Martin Odegaard being unfortunately unavailable. Of course, the bone of contention being carrying on picking Willian on the left and not Gabi Martinelli. But there you go.
What about Lacazette up front in place of Aubameyang?
Well, the way Bang Bang has been playing of late, you can understand that he's not. He could. He perhaps his head has been. I don't know what's happened to Aubameyang, but he's been better, hasn't he? And you could imagine why not having Lacazette, who is perhaps more of a penalty box finisher than Aubameyang, thinking, right, we're not going to have so many balls on the counter, we're going to play a possession game, we need a striker. He does more work as well, defensive work and pressing work normally than Aubameyang does. So I don't have a big problem with that. I do have a big problem with what happened during the game, where it was obvious it was not working, that some players were having an absolutely awful night. Thomas Partey, I love that player. He's a wonderful player, but honestly, perhaps his worst game ever. Willian hit the post, or the outside of the post. Yeah, fine. But apart from that, didn't contribute anything. Slows the game down. When he receives the ball, never passes it straight away, never tried to go past his player. I tried a little bit in the second half when he realized I think it was going to be pulled off. But, there are so many things, and some decisions are, are flabbergasting, really.
Yeah, can I just...
And it's the lateness. 73rd, 77th, and 88th minute.
Yeah.
And the last one, perhaps, is the most shocking. Why take Emil Smith-Rowe and put Dani Ceballos. I mean, I still haven't understood. You will tell me, in the great scheme of things, it's just a detail. It's just a detail, but it didn't make any sense. And it was also a signal, and I hate that, and we're going to come to that, I know, at length. It was a signal, I'm taking off the most creative of my players to put up somebody whom I think can do a bit of defending. It's 88 minutes. It's the Pascal Sigan substitution, the one that always had us quaking in our boots.
Yeah. I mean, can I just come back to the Lacazette thing? Because, you make a point about him being picked as a penalty box striker and what have you.
Yeah.
But does that not require him to actually play in the penalty box? There was so many occasions when he wasn't there. And Philippe, there was a moment in this game which was unbelievable. It was jaw-dropping. Granit Xhaka, on the rare occasion when Arsenal decided to press the goalkeeper, who looked like he just come to the concept of what kicking a football means and was trying to figure out how it worked, on the rare occasion we decided to put some pressure on the goalkeeper, Xhaka was pressing, they hoofed the ball upfield, and there, like some kind of miniature Franz Beckenbauer, between the two central defenders, was our sweeper, Alexandre Lacazette. Now, I just cannot get my head around the idea that okay, look, positional discipline is a thing. You've got to, someone goes, someone's got to fill the space. But if your central midfielder is pressing, why is your striker dropping back into defence when he should be there to take advantage, perhaps, of an error that the goalkeeper might make? And the other part of this is that while I accept Aubameyang has not been in good form of late, it was widely known before the game that Slavia Prague play with a high line, that there might be space in behind, and that, regardless of, current form, is a selection which suits Aubameyang far more than it suits Lacazette. And it felt to me, I have no evidence for this, and maybe I'm just speculating, and maybe I'm wrong to do so, but it felt more like a selection that was designed to not punish, but perhaps make a point to Aubameyang rather than being the right one for the game that we were trying to win.
As in telling your captain, we're playing the most important game of the season, you're not part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, after having made him sign a contract, which, with bonuses and loyalty bonus and signing on fee makes him, I think, the second highest paid player in the Premier League. Yeah, that's a strange message to put across. I was just trying to... to try to make the case for... I was being the devil's advocate here because, I agree with you. I'm just trying to find some logic, and there is an element of logic. You could even say that there is an element of logic by telling a player who hasn't been exactly pulling in the right direction, listen, my friend, we can do without you, and we'll show you that we can win without you. So now,
you've got to win, though.
I agree with you. But the thing is, the first half was painful. But we've got almost used to the pain. It was one of those, it's like going to the hygienist rather than to the dentist without anesthesist. If you say the hygienist is unpleasant, but, come on.
You can cope.
You can cope. The dentist without the anesthetic, that's dead unpleasant. And the first half was getting the tooth ready to be pulled, and the second half was having your tooth pulled. So I come back to the substitutions and the timing of them. Don't you have the feeling that when you wait so long to make the substitutions, it's because you don't know what you're doing, and you don't quite understand what the hell is going on? On one hand, you think we've created chances, but we've hit the woodwork twice. So maybe we're doing something okay. So let's keep it going for a little bit longer. Oh, shit, it's not working. We'd better do something. And then suddenly within, 5 minutes, but past the 70th minute, you make 4 substitutions, which, by the way, work.
Yeah.
Kind of work.
Yeah. We scored.
And we scored. And also, I thought that Aubameyang actually really looked up for it to start with. I mean, the way he was fighting for the balls and the way, which he doesn't always do. Pepe was very lively. El Neni is El Neni. He will, he's a 6.5 out of 10 kind of player. But it's better than a player who can be a 9 and was a 3 on the night. That is Thomas Partey. So, they made sense. But why wait so long? And why this extraordinary? I know we've talked about it before, and probably we should submit this to the lawyers. But why is Willian playing?
It's a really good question. I don't really understand why, with all the evidence that has presented itself this season in terms of his performances, why he appears to be a hill that Mikel Arteta is willing to die on. I mean, I get okay, an experienced player, it's a European quarterfinal, etc., etc. On paper you can say, well, maybe it's not the worst idea to pick a guy who's been there, done that, worn the t-shirt a few times in this competition. So I sort of understand it from that point of view. That's a purely objective view, but based on what we've seen from Willian and the way that, look, I think this is true of Lacazette as well. I think, in order to be a good football team nowadays, you need to be able to play football at a certain pace. And I don't think Willian can play at that pace anymore. No. Not with his legs and not with his head. I think Lacazette struggles in the same way as well. And when you have too many players like that on the pitch, it inhibits the way you play. And look, they weren't the only culprits. You're right to point out Thomas Partey had a really, really poor game. I think we made a mistake in using Cedric at left back as well. Yep. But, I don't know what more we can say about the Willian thing. If we can see it as fans, what is it that Mikel Arteta is seeing that is apparently completely different from almost everyone else? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that and let people draw their own conclusions.
Right.
I've drawn mine a while ago, but I can't talk about it, so I won't. But I'm sorry. This is when something is staring at you in the face.
People can, of course, make their own minds up as to why Willian is continually picked. So we'll leave that to their own fertile imaginations. Mm-hmm. And we'll move on to talking about, I suppose, another aspect of game management is how you control a game when you finally get the goal that you're looking for. And you're right. It was a really good goal. Aubameyang, I think, won it well in midfield. Yes. He didn't get the ball initially, but won it back, played a decent pass. And when I spoke about pace earlier, that's what I'm talking about. With Nicolas Pepe on the charge at warp speed, the defender could not catch him. The finish is incredible. I think it's a really underrated finish considering how quick he was moving and the angle. It was very, very tight. A really good goal from a footballer, a piece of football played at high speed, which is exactly what you need. So, given the goal came in the 86th minute of a home... Was it the 88th?
I think it's 88, yes.
I'll go back and check my live blog and just make sure. Either way, it was very late in the game. 86, 87.
86. Sorry, I'm thinking of the substitution. Sorry, the last substitution, because that has really traumatized me, but never mind.
Yeah, so Ceballos on for Smith Rowe.
88,
Yeah. I think you made this point on Twitter about the team's ability, if you want to call it that, to stop playing when they score instead of, keeping control of the game. And I think the build up to their goal is a perfect example of that. When Cedric has the ball in acres of space on the left-hand side, I know he's a right footer playing at left back, but the position, as left back demands that you go forward. You drive forward, you keep pressure away from your final third. Instead, he played an iffy pass to Gabriel. Gabriel's touch is not great. They get a throw, they take a shot, Leno makes a save, they get a corner, Cedric's defending is terrible. And it all stems from that cautiousness, Yep. Is that just the players, or is that something that's coming from the manager in that, he wants them to keep possession? If you need to keep possession, you have to go backwards sometimes. It is and has been a common failing of Arsenal over the years, though, that when we get the goal, we concede quite often soon afterwards because we immediately stop what we were doing and sit on the goal.
Yes, which is I have to say, at one point, you wonder if it's part of Arsenal's DNA. And we were talking with various gooners on Twitter last night, just trying to give a date of birth to that weird phenomenon. And I think we more or less all agreed around 2008, 2009 being about the time when things started. I mean, after Eduardo's injury, basically, this is when we started to become this team that seemed to have completely forgotten how to defend a lead. When it was one of the great strengths, by the way, of the great Wenger sides. They were remarkable at this. You knew when it was 2-0 and it was 45 minutes to play, you thought, no problem. It's gone to the reverse. And so part of it is a culture within the club for the players who've been there for a while, who've been there, experienced this feeling of insecurity which goes through the team like a chill up the spine of the supporters who are watching it. It's something which immediately finds all the ramifications in an instant. And so partly there's that. But the character of the players as well must be questioned, because there was nobody who was really trying to say to the others, guys, can we go up the pitch a little bit? Maybe it's not a good idea to defend our 20 yards or to keep passing the ball backwards when we've got perfectly decent forward balls to play. And then it's the manager. The signals he sends, the instructions is given, because I would imagine that, when you prepare a game, you prepare scenarios as well. So that if we open the scoring, this is what we've got to do. If we're 2-0 up, then, you prepare those scenarios. If we go behind, this is what we do. Really basic stuff. But there was an element of, what is extraordinary as well is that if you remember, I don't have the exact phase of play which happened just after the goal was kicked. But I think within 15 seconds, I'd gone from a state of almost happiness, or certainly relief, to a state of worry, which was not just the habit of worry, but because I could see that they were trying to delay a throw-in. They were passing the ball backwards. There were all these signs that, they're trying to do something they don't know how to. They don't know how to keep a result. The only way Arsenal could keep a result.
It was Leno delaying a goal kick, and the referee told them.
When in fact they had Arsenal, since the substitutions, had been on top clearly.
Yeah.
There was a second goal to be scored, and 2-0 at home. You think that's it? We're in the semis. More or less, because Slavia Prague, you can imagine them scoring one perhaps, but they would have to, all the kind of scenarios.
Sure.
But you could feel it happen. And then it was Leno, but then there was also a passage of play on the right-hand side where, there was some nonsense. And then this thing of the players. This is one thing that I've become more and more aware, I suppose, as I've been watching not just Arsenal but other teams, is that the more it goes, the more I watch how players make themselves available rather than watch the ball, which is very instructive, because when you try not to focus on what is happening to the ball, but what is happening around it and the movements of the players, are they opening angles of passing or not? You realize Arsenal players, some of them are very good at making sure there's absolutely no angle of passing which is available, so that they seem to be moving, but they're moving in a position where they can't receive the ball. So they give the impression of doing something positive when in fact they're hiding on the pitch.
Yes. Yeah.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I'm afraid that when you concentrate on that, you see the difference, like suddenly from 1 minute to the next. Before that, when it's 0-0, we're going for it and we're genuinely trying to play football. And we are playing some football. The minute we score, we go into this weird mode when it's basically, this is the last place I want to be on.
Yeah.
I'd rather be anywhere else than here today, to quote, Elvis Costello. And that's not exactly a recipe for success, even against the team. I mean, a good team, Slavia Prague is a good team, but which is, in terms of, it's inferior. We should be to Arsenal. I mean, in a football where the strength of teams is very much determined by their financial clout, Arsenal should be about 4 or 5 times better than Slavia Prague.
Yeah.
They're not. Definitely not.
I mean, you referenced the Ceballos for Smith Rowe's substitution and the signal that it sends. I mean, do you feel like that is part of what happened and how it happened? Because, nominally, Ceballos is a midfielder who likes to be on the ball, likes to touch the ball, you would say he's probably more of an attacking midfielder. I'm not saying he is an attacking midfielder, but he's certainly more of an attacking midfielder than a defensive midfielder in terms of where his strengths, such as they are, might lie.
Andrew, I would say that of the players who were available on the bench at that stage, he was the most defensive-minded. That's perhaps what I have in mind.
Right.
He's not Reece Nelson, and he's definitely not Eddie Nketiah. Right?
Yeah.
So, of course, he could have sent Pablo Mari in and play with 6 at the back or whatever it is. But of the sort of outfield players who you can imagine being replacing Emil Smith Rowe, he was the most defensive. When in fact, I've always thought that in this kind of situation against an opponent which is trying to get back into the game, what really can make the difference is having speed up front. I mean, which is not exactly rocket science either.
No, I mean, we did have Aubameyang and Pepe on the pitch.
He was playing back. I mean, he was also, and the thing is that it's not the first thing, mistakes can happen. You can have an off day, but so many times, and this is one of the problems we have, is that we still don't know exactly what to think. That, which I think is a very uncomfortable place to be. Most of us really wish Mikel Arteta well. Most of us think he's got his heart in the right place, that he cares an awful lot, perhaps too much actually, about the job, that he's genuinely trying to find solutions. Some of his choices have been very good ones. We've won a trophy with him, which is a thing that some neighbours of ours cannot say. We've had a period in December, late December, very late December and early January, where we were actually good. We were very good, and we thought, actually, we might be back in the race for the top 4. Remember, that's not so long ago. It's just 9 rounds ago. And then suddenly there's this happening, and you think, well, where is the progress? Well, I don't know where the progress is. I mean, the injuries, the thing is that our squad is thin. So when you have injuries to Kieran Tierney and Martin Odegaard, who are now 2 of the most important players in the starting 11, yes, it does have an impact, but it shouldn't be that big an impact for a club like Arsenal.
No, I mean, we should be able to cope, and we should be able to, having gone 1-0 up against Slavia Prague, see that game out at the very least. And I think you're right. I think the approach, I just think there's probably a natural a terror or something built into too many of these players when they're in scenarios like that, that the inclination is to drop off, invite pressure. And unfortunately, we're not good enough defensively to manage that kind of a situation. There've been times,
and also you can drop off and contain pressure. First of all, you need to know how to do this, and it's an art form. And then you've got to be able, when you finally get the ball back, which you do when you're defending, to do something else than hoofing it 30 yards down the pitch blindly, so it comes back immediately to you.
Yeah, it's panic.
And that's one thing that Arteta, I thought, had worked on, is the fact playing from the back. But it's amazing that sometimes we seem to be able to play from the back in situations where we're pressured and there's some intricate triangles and so forth. But then, last night, any kind of order went out of the window. It was extraordinary. People were hoofing, just hoofing the ball. I mean, it's crazy.
It is. Sorry. And like Bernd Leno played 17 long balls last night.
And they were long. They were long.
Yeah, long. Because I heard Arteta shout at him at one point. He was shouting at him to hit it towards Nicolas Pepe, I think. This was late in the game. He wanted the goal kick to be angled. But from the start, even that in itself, doesn't it? It sort of hints to not a betrayal is the wrong word, but a compromising of the principles that Arteta spoke about. And these are things, when he spoke it's a few months ago now, somebody said to him, are you worried when your team plays it out from the back? And he said, no, I'm not worried. I'm more worried when we kick it long because the ball just comes back to you and you don't have any control. Yeah. So, this sort of compromising of the principles, which I think are reasonable ones, are good ones. If that's the way you want to play that way. Mm-hmm. Play that way and do it consistently. It speaks to a kind of, if we talk about the players, in a scenario where they're sitting deep, Arteta in a scenario where he's planning for a game, it's almost the equivalent of that, isn't it? It's like, okay, take the easy option here.
Yep. Yes, and it comes. I mean, you talk about playing from the back, and the same goes about what's happening on the other side of the pitch, which is the pressing, which was as disorganized. I mean, if you can call that pressing, it was people running about, like a fly who's been, under an upturned glass, flying in every direction, trying to find a way out, and there is none, and which is ridiculous. And you can't press like that. And actually, were we supposed to press or not press? I'm not too clear about that. Do you think we were pressing or not pressing? And that some players had forgotten, oh no, we're not pressing tonight.
Yeah.
And
it was hard to know, wasn't it? Because, there were times where I was standing looking at this goalkeeper trying to figure out, like, football, what do I do here? Oh, I think I'll clump it over this way and see what happens. And I know he was making unforced errors, but I wonder if we had forced some more errors from him. But, I think this again is when you have a striker like Lacazette, who, with the greatest of respect, is not, the most physically capable, the most fit. He's had issues since he arrived with lasting the 90 minutes. And I do wonder if part of his lack of pressing is to sort of conserve energy for later stages of the game in case he's needed. He's not somebody who's going to press.
You could call him Lacazette.
Lack of zest, indeed. I mean, we can laugh, but it's also a bit kind of sad in a way, and I don't mean just for him. I mean for us that this is not what we're reduced to, but this is we're having to compromise the way that we apparently want to play. Because the manager wants to send a message to his captain, and he's picking an inferior goal scorer in a game which doesn't really suit him and which suits the other guy. And I get sometimes as a manager you need to send a message and you need to set standards and all of those things. But ultimately, do you not earn your chops as a manager in terms of, how the players view you and how you are viewed as a manager by results rather than, how strict you are as a headmaster, if you like,
Mm-hmm. Now, the thing obviously is that we might, if we were recording this next Friday, we might have a completely different point of view on everything after Arsenal's 6-1 victory in Prague. And suddenly, I know, you've got to believe somehow.
Somehow, yes.
Somehow. But the fact is, as the opposition gets better, which of course it does when you progress through the tournament, because we're still progressing through the tournament, unlike some others, this kind of inconsistency and imperfections are being picked on. They already had against Olympiacos. I thought we were actually extremely lucky over the two legs, to be absolutely honest with you. You can't really see the way that it's going to improve much. Because it's such a bizarre squad. It's so unbalanced in terms of level, in terms of age, in terms of potential, in terms of the profiles. You don't really know how it is built and for which purpose, which is, very important. Like, for example, I'll take the example of Leicester to take, most people feel quite neutral or actually favorably inclined towards Leicester. It's fairly obvious that there is, in terms of what they've recruited, the players they've got, both on the pitch and on the bench, they've got a style of play which is very well defined, and they have players who fit in this type of play. All of them. Absolutely all of them. It's what's called a well-balanced squad. Ours is bizarre. It is really bizarre, because do we favor dynamic defenders Do we favour players who are good at distributing from the back? Do we favour ball-playing midfielders? Do we favour... I don't know. From one game to the next, I don't really know actually what we stand for. And we've got some decent players. And there are so many mysteries. I mean, it's... you've got players who are in their 30s. And then you've got Odegaard, Saka and Smith Rowe and Tierney, whom people would say are probably the four great satisfactions of our season, were only starting their career. But actually, like even Saka, who I absolutely adore, didn't have a good game yesterday. He really didn't. He was very imprecise in some of his passing. He wasn't quite. He's still capable of going past his man or past two or past three, but he was not quite as magnificently wonderful or wonderfully magnificent as it's been for part of the season. He might be a bit tired as well, which is perfectly explainable. But I that's one of we don't know where we're going. The results actually show that we have some moments where we look the part, the moment where we look a completely different part, which is not a good one, and where we look like the villain, or the dustbin in the corner of the house, and we don't have that. And you don't get the feeling that there is some kind of plan in place, be it in terms of recruitment. So, because on one hand, yes, you get Tierney and you get Saka to sign a new deal, but on the other hand, you extend David Luiz's deal, which, by the way, I've got no problems with. Actually, we've missed David Luiz last night, I thought.
Well, I mean, I think that's a, that in itself is a microcosm of where we are, that David Luiz, at nearly 34 years of age and with the errors that he has made in his short time at the club, and, I think he's been decent in the last couple of months, is probably our best central defender. So that tells you something. I think you're right to say that the squad is weird. And the other thing I would say is that, if I'm concerned about Mikel Arteta being a slow learner when it comes to in-game management, you referenced that period over December, January, where we looked good. And we looked good for the most part with Smith Rowe, Saka, Odegaard, and a striker. And I accept that Lacazette played his part in some of those games, but, an Aubameyang kind of striker really suits having those three technical players behind him.
Yep.
And why... I know that there are injuries and Odegaard wasn't fit for today, and maybe it would have all been different if he'd played yesterday and everything else. But, that really seems to me to be the thing that we should be leaning into. Like, that is our blueprint. And if Odegaard is not available, you've got Smith Rowe to play that part. And then you've got someone like Martinelli on the left-hand side. Like, use what can be better. Don't keep using the things which have been and continue to be bad.
All I can say is that I'm sitting listening to you, thinking, yes, I'm nodding like one of those dogs at the back of a window seat, and stupidly. But I entirely agree with you. And again, that's got to do with the fact of Arsenal having a very fluid identity.
Yes.
Which is basically close to no identity. And what is frustrating is that there was one point this season, again, where we thought, actually, this is we were all actually quite chirpy at the time, because we thought, okay, we won't make the top four, but we're going in the right direction. And that's what's great. And it's actually quite exciting to see young players who come from the club doing well. I was genuinely happy to see Odegaard arrive at the club. I still am very happy, and I hope we can keep him somehow. But again, there is perhaps an unnatural penchant for caution in Mikel Arteta, which he's going to have to fight against. And I don't know if it's part of his education at the David Moyes School of Managing Games. I don't think he learned that with Pep Guardiola. Maybe that's his personality. Maybe that's his conviction. He believes in caution. But what was understandable when you arrived, when it was a building site, basically, and it really needed to have some, structure built into the team. You can understand that, but they're perhaps no longer now. And even what he had done well at the beginning, and from the beginning, which was to give the team a semblance of defensive structure and solidity, which is certainly something he did quite quickly into his tenure, seems to have gone out of the window. So it's odd because we've lost something we thought we were on the verge of acquiring. And at the same time, the other thing we thought that we were acquiring, perhaps at the cost of some defensive solidity, we've lost that too. And so, certainly it looked that way yesterday. I won't even refer to the game against Liverpool, which was just so shocking that, and against what is clearly a poor and knackered Liverpool team. We were rubbish, absolutely rubbish. So, what next?
Okay, well,
Sheffield United, who are relegated. Okay, how are we going to prepare that? Thinking, well, that's a good game to win for starters. That would be a good thing to win a game. Or are we going to go? Oh, we've got this return game which we must win.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, we could be too old, but we must win. And in Prague on Thursday. So what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, it is whatever eggs are left in our season, they're all in the Europa League basket. There's no two ways about that. And then it is finding the balance between, okay, we need to win a game and, build a little bit of confidence and momentum because those things are actually important in football. But how do you pick a team, that might end up with an injury or two that could hinder your chances for next week? But look, I think that's something we might, discuss on the side and on the podcast a little bit later in the week. I wanted to broaden this out because you talked about a plan, and you talked about, the apparent lack of a plan. And I'm really interested in the wider discussion around what the club are going to do and what the club should do, because, it's very difficult in a Premier League season when you have lost 12 games, you're sitting mid-table, you haven't made any improvement, to make any substantive case for the manager to stay in those circumstances. However, there is a context to this season and what's happened since Mikel Arteta has taken over. COVID, the pandemic, the finances, all of those things, you can't ignore them. And I'm not saying they're excuses, but you can't ignore them. We could win the Europa League. I don't think we will. I don't think we're competent as a football team enough to do that. But nevertheless, we did win the FA Cup last season, beating Chelsea and Man City. So you can never quite say never, based on what we've done in that competition. We do that. We win the Europa League. It's a huge achievement for Arsenal Football Club. We're back in the Champions League. It does provide you with a boost. And that's something that, as a manager, if he achieves a European trophy win, I mean, that's an incredible thing. It's not something Arsene Wenger was ever able to do in his 20-odd years as a better manager with better teams or anything like it. But I'm sort of, my faith or my ability to try and see the positives was quite dented last night. And I wonder about this summer. I wonder about, there must be a kind of a plan. There must be a recruitment plan, a recruitment strategy. Whether it's to make the squad more bizarre or less bizarre, your guess is as good as mine. You'd like to think that it would be one which helps forge a certain identity, but we can't glean that yet from what we're seeing from Mikel Arteta, because it's sort of, are we a short passing team? Are we going to hoof it long? There's all this stuff going on. But you have to think that between himself and Edu, there is a plan. We know that there is a guy coming in called Richard Garlick, who was part of the Premier League, and he was at West Brom as well, and he's gonna be part of the executive setup at the club, and I think we need somebody in that position. Whether he's going to be any good or not, I don't quite know. But if throwing it out there, you get rid of a manager now, are you not kind of back to square one in terms of your planning, your squad, all of those things? It's a really, some will say it's easy. Like if a manager underperforms, you sack him, you get a new manager. But there are all these other things going on that would suggest, if you just get involved with the rinse and repeat, sack a manager, change when things aren't going right, you're never going to be able to build. You know, we've seen what happened after Wenger. The thing we put in place didn't work. When Mislintat, Gazidis left, Mislintat forced out, Sanyehi took over, Sanyehi did things that he did, you know, the vultures circled, etc., etc. And you need somebody, you know, to put that right. You know, I think anybody would say you need somebody to come in and build something and build a structure and put that right. And Mikel Arteta talks about that. And that's, I think, why people have had a little more patience with what's been going on, because I think most people can see you need to put that right. But what if Mikel Arteta is just another, or if it's a mistake like the others? You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's difficult. I know it's a really difficult thing to answer.
It's an impossible question to answer, honestly, because whether is the right, I think the problem, and we've talked about this before, the problem goes way beyond Mikel Arteta. The recruitment is obviously part of the problem. I mean, I'm not talking about Thomas Partey coming in, because that was, you know, even though he was rubbish last night, he's a very fine player. I've got no problem with him being part of the team. But the rest of the recruitment has been strange, basically. And that's got to change. But unfortunately, and that's where the big problem is, we were part just of the super elite of European football up until, let's say, the mid-2010s, okay? We were part of the elite. Even the super elite, both in terms of achievement, even though we decried those achievements at the time, perhaps didn't enjoy them as we should have done. And also, most importantly, financially. I've come back to that. And the fact that Arsenal are now out of the top 10 of the clubs with the biggest turnover on the planet, when that place was, you know, rock solid not that long ago, they've gone out. And I can tell you that given the kind of figures that I'm hearing, in the background, we do not have, obviously, the figures for 2021. But we are going to be affected by the pandemic far, far more than other clubs, because we rely so much on match day revenue and revenues which, you know, derive from that we're going to take a much bigger hit than other clubs who don't, basically. So I can imagine that our 11th place in the Deloitte wage list is going to become the 14th or 15th come the year after that. And that when you go down in this particular type of competition, you sink unless you manage to react very, very quickly. And that is my main concern. My concern goes way beyond the fact that Arteta doesn't seem to have a settled idea of the way he wants to play. Sure enough, you know, it's been derailed at times by injuries and the like. But there's that. There's the lack of a direction at club level. Certainly, when it comes to we do not have the same kind of structure in place as other better run clubs do. Our owner is, you know, what is that to say that we haven't said 100 times?
Yeah.
And the structure, which, you know, it can be okay to have an absentee owner and blah, blah, as long as you've got a decent executive structure in place, and it doesn't seem perhaps to be the case yet. I harp on quite a lot about that, but I do think that our relationship with a few so-called super agents is something which is totally out of order. Yes. And is bad for the club. And I carry on like that. But it's the money thing, Andrew, which really concerns me the most, because we're looking at the moment, if we go out of the Europa League, at the first season where we will not be taking part in the European tournament since 92-93. Just let that sink in. What it means in terms, for the fans, for us fans, because we've taken these European nights, even the Europa League nights, for granted, and we've had some fantastic times doing that. And it's great to have this kind of pressure on you, and it's great being able to talk about the game against Slavia Prague and thinking about perhaps going to the final, or maybe not. It's great. Imagine what next season would be if we had no European football. at all. And I mean at all. This is our last chance. For the first time in 29 years.
We were in a similar position last season as well. When the FA Cup represented our last chance of...
Seized that chance, absolutely. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done us. But we're not in an FA Cup final. We're not in a final yet. We're in the quarters.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I'm taking nothing for granted.
Things are going to change. What I'm saying is that I'm looking at the future, and that's all I'm doing right now is to emphasize how important this tie is, and hopefully the tie that goes after that. This is how important it is, and when you produce a performance which is lethargic for 45 minutes, decent for about 20, and then completely fall apart at the end, you can be genuinely worried. And because once you get out, that's the problem, is that there is no the fluidity that I was talking about in our identity. There is no such fluidity when it comes to your place in the hierarchy of European football. And the more it's going to go, the more it's going to be set in stone. The clubs which are haven't managed to hook their car to that locomotive will find themselves in the station or in the knacker's yard. That's where they will find themselves. Because the more it's going to go, the more the powerful will be powerful. Yeah. And we are going the opposite way at the moment. So it's not too late, but there has to be a very, very strong reaction and very quick reaction. Whether it is a change of manager, I don't necessarily think so. Whether recruitment will play a big part. And I think lighting loads of candles at Notre Dame might do the trick.
Well, I mean, this is what I was going to ask you. It's not necessarily a question of what I would do or you would do or what anyone out there would do. It's what we think or what you think the club will do. So, having come, I have to believe that there are plans, that there is lines of communication with the owners, that there is an acceptance at every level that what is happening at this football club right now is not good enough for Arsenal. From the manager to the owners to the technical director to the players, that has to be the bottom line, an absolute fact of life. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what happens in the Europa League, having committed thus far to Mikel Arteta's plans and rebuilding project, and there are things that have been done. You think about what happened in January. Paying players to go away is not the most sophisticated piece of business that a club has to do, but if you get rid of what was an unhealthy clique in your dressing room and in your training ground, that's a positive thing, right? So they backed him in those sort of terms, and then you think this window, given that last window and last summer was absolutely derailed by the pandemic and everything else. This window is a part of it. So whether he wins the Europa League or not, whether we have European football or not, it feels to me like the club have committed to such an extent that they don't really have a choice other than to let it play out a bit longer.
Yeah, and the thing is that the first season of the pandemic, the end of the 2019-2020 season, we didn't take such a big hit, financially speaking. We will have taken it this season, and this will have a direct impact on on the strength of recruitment, because in the past very often we have managed to get players because we were good at selling them we were selling them. I can't think of many players we can sell at the moment.
There's loads we can sell, but it's just
but at the right prices.
Yeah, well, exactly.
At prices which are going to make a difference. Obviously.
Yeah, it may not be. It may not be selling one player for a substantial amount. It might be selling quite a lot of players for middling amounts. If that makes sense.
That would be, but that in itself would be a sign, and a positive sign. Because this we're going to have, it's going to be a strange, it's going to be a strange market anyway, where most clubs are basically trying to avoid bankruptcy at the moment. So it's going to be a strange market in which it's going to be a buyer's market, basically. So it's going to take some bravery. And it will entirely depend on, this is where I go back to Kroenke. It will entirely depend on Kroenke and what he's willing to do. Because things have changed in another respect, is that basically financial fair play is no longer a factor.
Yeah.
So which means if an owner decides that money should be plowed into the business, the owner will be able to do it. And that's valid at at the level at which Arsenal operates. The UEFA won't come down like a ton of bricks on Kroenke if Kroenke decides, you know what, of all my billions, maybe I should spend 100 million quid on trying to preserve my investment in this weird place called Arsenal Football Club.
Yeah.
So it's down to him. It's down to him.
That doesn't fill me with a great deal of optimism.
Well, the only time when people like Kroenke, I think, will be willing to look at their resources and plow some resources into a sports team is the minute when they realize that the sports team is about to go down dramatically in value. This is the case today. There are so many unknowns at the moment. And I'm talking again, and I apologize for that, for perhaps making, just throwing things out there in the open, which are purely hypothetical. I personally don't think that we're going to go back to capacity in stadiums for a very, very long time. And when I say very, very long time, I'm not talking weeks, I'm not talking months, I'm talking years and years and years. And I think that, in fact, most people would agree with me. We'll have to have measures in place for quite a while. And because we don't know when we're going to get out of this fucking nightmare. That's one thing. So it will hit us big time. It will hit us, again, more than it will hit any other club in proportion in the Premier League. Any other club. Maybe Spurs, maybe not, but we are really top of the tree for that. So therefore, we have to think about that and think, okay, so we need to generate revenue, we need to do this, we need to do that. That means, that's very simple. You need to participate in a European competition in the Champions League if you can. Even the Europa League just brings some money, and also brings an argument. There is, when you're also recruiting players. Imagine if Arteta and Edu go to the players' supermarket during the summer and we propose you a contract with a club that's just finished 12th in the Premier League and is not playing European competition. Well, it's a bit harder sell than, we had a tough year, but we're going to be playing Europe. And look at that, last year we were in the quarterfinals, the semi-finals of the Europa League or whatever. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going back on my tracks here, but what I'm trying to say is that we are at a very perilous moment in our club's history. And I'm not saying that because of the result of one game.
Yes,
okay, let's be clear about that. Yeah. This is not something, a reaction spur of the moment. It's something that I've been talking about. And I think we actually talked about it together and through the past, that I feel is but I'm getting more and more worried about it. I lose track of the number of articles, columns that I've written on the subject, basically having only to do cut and paste to publish the next one, with perhaps changing the names of the games that I'm referring to, and the extent of the decline in results. Yeah. But we have got a systemic existential problem, which is due to the fact that this business is approached at the very, very top. And the clubs, which are brave enough, and the owners who are brave enough to think, well, we've got to get the bit between our teeth and actually go for it, will be the ones who survive. The others can become irrelevancies. Arsenal, there is nothing permanent. Arsenal could become one of those sleeping giants. There's no reason why it couldn't be the case. It's not because you've got a stadium that was once the biggest and most beautiful in the country, or best equipped, maybe not most beautiful, that is going to help you remain what you are. It's not because you've had this prodigious history that we're so proud of that other clubs which have got a prodigious history have gone through moments like that. There's no reason why that what has happened to Wolves, for example, could happen to us. I'm sorry if I sound so negative. This is all hypothesis. I'm not saying it's too late already. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we've got to keep in mind the fact that it is a possibility and we need to avoid this at all costs. And to avoid this at all costs, we need investment. We need the right people at the right place, but we need especially investment in the team.
Can somebody please, if you're listening and who has access to KSE, please just snip out the last 10 minutes of this podcast and send it to them so they can have a listen, because I think that's perfectly said, Philippe. And on that note, that cheery note, we'll leave it there. Maybe we could just
remember there is always rum.
There is always rum. There are golden liquids which can help, of course. I won't forget that. Philippe, as always, I love talking to you and I love talking football with you. And thank you very much indeed for being here today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and to take care.
Well, there you go. There's a discussion and a half. Thank you, as always, to Philippe. You can find him on Twitter at Philippe Auclair, at Philippe Auclair. I'm not going to dally too much on the rest of this podcast because I want to get it out. It's Friday coming up on midday, so I want to get this out for people to listen to. We do have Sheffield United on Sunday evening, that poxy time slot, which we've played 4 times so far this season and lost all those games as far as I'm aware. So hopefully we can make it 5th time lucky. That's a thing, isn't it? 5 times? I don't know. Anyway, James and I will be here on Monday with an Arsecast Extra discussing whatever happens in that. And of course, we will be talking. Sheffield United will do a short preview podcast for Patreon. And we'll be looking ahead then next week to the return leg in Prague. What a big, big game that is going to be. In the meantime, thank you as always for being here. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your support and your comments and emails and all the rest. It's hugely appreciated. Hope you can have a great weekend, one way or another. If Arsenal manage to win a game of football, that would certainly help. So let's hope they can do that, and I will catch you on the next one. Until then, take it easy. Cheers. Bye-bye. Due to rights restrictions, the end bit of this week's Arsecast is not available in your country. Which is a real shame because it was great. I mean, even if I do say so myself, it was probably one of the funniest ones ever. And you'll never be able to hear it. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry for you, really. I mean, I can experience it whenever I want. I can just press play and chuckle away to myself. I know it's ridiculous laughing at your own jokes, but I'm telling you, it was just so good. So good. Unlike Arsenal right now.